Thank you for joining us today. My name is Heather Jameson. I'm with the Montana After School Alliance, and I'm their STEM lead there. This is our second presentation for Winter Wonders, and we have joining us Project Wet, and we have Beth and Julia, and they'll be spending some time with us this morning going over some of the resources they have. And they are a worldwide organization, but their headquarters is based in Bozeman. So it's pretty neat that they have that Montana-based perspective and can share some activities with us. So I'll hand it over to Julia and Beth, and thank you all for joining us.
Well, thank you, everyone. We are from Project Wet, and we're excited to talk to you about snow and climate today. I am Beth Whitty. I work with our educational programs, and this is Julia. Julia, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Julia Beck. I'm the VP of Networks with Project Wet, so I provide all the resources to our partners who implement our programs.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so getting started today, we're going to go through a few activities with you all. Julia, would you mind putting the Google folder link in the chat? So as we get started, we have a bunch of resources for you in a Google folder, so feel free to check that out, download if you want to follow along as we go. How many people, can I just get like a raise of hand, are already familiar with Project Wet, have worked with our activities before? Anyone?
And if you don't know how to raise hands, you could always put it in the chat.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right, so a couple people. Fantastic. Okay, yeah, so today we've selected a few specific activities talking about snow and climate and how our watershed works. So today we'll be doing an activity called Seeing Watersheds, Snow and Tell, and A Year in Our River. Those are all found on the Google Drive. We have something called the Bozeman Guide. For those of you who live in the Bozeman watershed, you can just follow it directly as is. For those of you in other areas of Montana, the activities are actually pretty generic and can be broadly used. We just have to change the maps and the river names when you're using the activities. So it is still for you. It's just we haven't edited it all to make it generically Montana. All right. At the end of today, if we have some time, we'll try to go into some climate change explorations and how do we guide those kinds of conversations. And then we'll talk about other trainings and resources we have. Okay, so to get us started, if you would like to follow along today, we have two activities that are more material intensive, and we'll show a video where I'll demonstrate those, but there's one where you can play along. So if you want to do that, you can grab two markers, just different colors, and a sheet of white paper or wax paper and some water. So if you would like to participate as we go, you can do that. So while you go get those materials, I'm going to play a video about Project Wet to get us started. And then this video is also on our website. So if you miss it while you're getting materials, that's okay. It's quick. It's only a minute.
Ingredient for life on Earth. It grows our food, powers our industry. It keeps us clean and makes us happy. Life would not be the same without it. But our water is threatened by pollution, mismanagement, and Earth's changing climate. Project Wet, Water Education Today, provides the critical link between today's water stress and tomorrow's thriving communities through proven science and hands-on learning. Our goal is to advance water education to help address global challenges and inspire local solutions. Project Wet is for everyone. Educators and students of all ages use our lessons in their classrooms. Corporations rely on our practical approach to teach their employees the value of water and its inherent connection to STEM. Millions of people in 80 countries and all 50 states work with Project Wet each year. We envision a world in which action-oriented education enables a better understanding of the value of water, ensuring a sustainable future for all of us. We can't wait until tomorrow to better understand the value of water. We need Project Wet, Water Education Today.
Awesome. So let me go back here. So today what we're going to do is we are going to talk about snow and climate and the way our watershed works together. So we're going to talk about 3 questions. We're going to talk about.
You're not sharing your screen, just so you know.
That's okay. Hold on. All right, hold on. There we go. All right, so we're going to talk about a few questions. Our big question is going to be like, do I drink snow? How do we get students engaged and thinking about why does snow matter to me? So do I drink snow? Where's my water coming from? Those kinds of questions. Today, we're going to talk about what is a watershed. We want to know, how does snow impact our water? And then how does water move during the year? And those 3 questions will guide us into thinking about, how does climate change? So if the snow is melting earlier or later in the year, if we're getting more or less, how is that changing how this whole system works? So, all right, Julia is going to help us with understanding what is a watershed.
Yeah. All right. So first question, what is a watershed? Anybody want to venture a guess in the chat box or just unmute yourself? Hannah, yeah.
So a watershed, to my understanding, is an area of land that water travels over to get to a central location, like a pond, river, stream, thing.
That is correct. Awesome. So many people do not get that correct. And so we're going to do a little activity to understand that. I mean, if you ask kids, they may even say it's a shed with water. That's a thing. So understanding, what a watershed is and how important that we all live in a watershed, right? And we all are part of a watershed. So it's not just the waterways, it's all of the land within that area too. And it's the land use and the animals and the humans, and it all impacts the ecosystem there and our health. Yes, a watershed is an area of land where all the water drains into one common body of water. And that's usually some sort of main river, like the Gallatin River here in Bozeman, for example, which then goes into the Missouri. So water moves from high elevations to lower elevations. And we're going to locate and describe the main components of a watershed and learn how to identify those and identify our local watersheds. We are going to, if you guys got a chance to get some paper, then I'll be fine. If you got some paper, that's great. We're going to show you how to do this. And to start off, you can just kind of take a look at it and think about, what would it look like if it was tilted like it is in this picture and water flows down it. And so you can see here, there's a few drops of colored something on it. I always like to take these water soluble markers, and you can just put a line on the top of it. Sorry, I know my background's making this hard, but my desk is a mess, so I really don't want to turn off my background. So you can make a line, and then when you drip water on it or spray water on it, I highly suggest using a spray bottle, because it's going to mimic what it's like for precipitation, whether it's snow or rain. It's distributed a little bit more evenly than just one single spot. So Beth is going to show you a video of how this works, and then I'll kind of go through the motions again in a second. So go ahead and play that. So you can see when we first have it tipped up, the water goes down a slope. All right. The next step is to fold it in half, have that color along the ridge line, and watch how water falls on either side of a piece of paper. So you just fold it in half and color the ridge line. You spray it on there, and then you watch where water falls. Now, who can tell me this? I'm sure you all can. What is the driving force that makes water go down one side or the other? Anybody, chat box or unmute? Yeah, Kaylee, thank you. Gravity, exactly. It's gravity. And so gravity is really what drives the watershed, right? What drives the movement of water down a watershed. Okay, so that's a pretty simple one. Now, what's going to happen, you think, when we crumple this up? And now we have this. And this kind of mimics a landscape, right? So at this point, we could color the different ridges, color higher or lower parts, all right? And then set it down and repeat this process and take a look what happens. So here again is our two sides.
I think it's
Right, so again, that's, sorry, this is from our online training. So you can see how water, it will, depending on which side of a ridge the water falls on, that's going to determine which watershed it flows into. So this idea of a ridge is really important to watersheds. All right, so here's that prediction. What do you think is going to happen when we have this crumpled piece of paper? How is the water going to move down? Does anybody want to make a prediction? Beth made a prediction of flowing downhill. All right, so here we go. We're going to take a look at this video. And as you see the water flowing down, we're spraying it on top of the peak, and the water's flowing down these different ridge lines and pooling in different places. So you can see these are different watersheds where it goes down and where it pools. And so this is a demonstration of really how water flows over a landscape.
Do you need this anymore?
You can actually just go back one, please. If you go onto our you can just Google our website, Project Wet and Water Education TV, and we have a bunch of demonstrations. So Kyla demonstrated this here as well. So if you need a little reminder, you can always check that out. All right, so yeah, if you don't have water, this is an alternative. I mean, I think most people would have water in their classrooms, but if you don't, you can just crumple a piece of regular white paper. You can do this with regular white paper too. It works. Eventually it'll get mushy, but it does work. And then you trace all the high points with one color and trace the low points with another color. And so then you can kind of see the high points are your boundaries, your ridge lines, and the low points, the rivers and streams there. So, oh yeah, so Beth made a demonstration there. You can see it.
All right.
Perfect. So this is just, it's really important, I think, to have the fundamentals of understanding what a watershed is. Oh, whoops, that didn't animate, but that's okay. So this activity also has another part where it helps you to understand what a watershed is, where you would color the main stem and then you would put dots all around the tributaries and trace it. And that's what it would look like. So this is what one watershed would look like, but we customized it for the Bozeman area with the city of Bozeman. Next slide. And so this is what that one looks like. So you can see this is the Gallatin, the Madison, and the Jefferson, which of course all come together at Three Forks to form the Missouri River. And so you guys can take a look on this on your own. We have trainings for it as well to help you. But basically you put dots at the end of each of these and trace them, and you color the main stems, and then you can see, go ahead, that you end up with these three watersheds. So that's in the Bozeman guide that you guys will all have a link to as a free activity. And it's a nice quick one that really helps to define a watershed. And then you can, next slide. We've got some more links here. EPA has a great website to help you discover your waterways and your watershed. What am I trying to say? Yeah, thanks, Beth. Where is this? Is this here? Oh, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the Bozeman watershed there. Yeah, you can see. And so you can look at that. You can zoom out and find your local watershed and define it. DEQ, I think it's DEQ, Montana has a bunch of maps of the Montana watershed, so you can look and see where your watershed is in Montana. And then we have, if we gave you this guide, but if you go to projectwet.org/Bozeman, in here, you can download the guide if you ever lose it. And there's also links to some other things, including a Google map that we created for Bozeman. You guys could definitely do the same thing for your area. So all this is just, we traced the Gallatin, the Madison, and the Jefferson on Google, and we put pins where they are and Bozeman, and then you can zoom in and out, and you can give this link to students so you can look at it together and really get into the features, like where are the headwaters? What does it look like there? It's mountains. You know, when you get down into the valley areas, that's when it starts flowing into Three Forks and becoming the Missouri. So you can look at the land features around there too. And then also think about land uses around there and what that means. So, you know, these three watersheds come together to be one here. But all of these are free resources that we have on that link. I think, is that River Runner? You want to show this, Beth?
Right. Yeah, so this is a site called River Runner, and it shows how different watersheds merge into each other, into bigger watersheds. So if I'm a raindrop and I fall in eastern Montana, it will go through a process and show me the path that a water drop takes until it gets to the outlet. So this is just a cool visualization feature. So students can really see where their water goes and that it travels.
And in Montana, we are very lucky to be at headwaters for this entire system. So, you know, it goes all the way down the Missouri to the Mississippi and then to the Gulf of Mexico.
And up in the top corner here, it'll give you a list of what bodies of water you're traveling through. And then obviously on the left, there's a bigger map so you can see where you are. And it will take us all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, which is kind of cool. So I won't have us watch the whole thing. You can actually speed it up. This is like fast forward and rewind. Just to save time, I will let you guys explore that on your own, but it's a River Runner. You could check that out. All right. Any questions on this activity and watersheds in general before we move on here? Any questions?
Do you guys know the watershed you live in? If you do, can you put it in the chat box? And if you don't, you're in really good company. Most adults don't. So this is why it's so important to start teaching this in school so that we grow up understanding this and knowing it. All right, Yellowstone, nice.
Awesome.
Several Yellowstones, yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, so we think that's why it's important to teach this, because so many adults do not know. Okay. All right, so once we have an understanding of watershed, what a watershed is, where we live in a watershed, we can start talking about how does that water get there? Who is feeding our watershed? So the next activity I want to look at is called Snow and Tell. This is also in the Google Drive. And what we want to talk about is how does snowpack impact my watershed? All right, so in this activity, what we're going to explore is how water managers monitor snow depth and the amount of snow, amount of water and snow to predict our water supply. Not all snow contains the same amount of water, and we're going to learn how to measure the snow water equivalent. And we're going to talk about why is this important? What does snow tell us? And how many people depend on snow. So we'll start there. Over half of the people on Earth are depending on snow melt for their water supply. So when snow is melting and how much and the timing is really important. So the first thing I would start with students is tell me what snow is. Obviously, we all live in Montana. Students are very familiar with snow. But really starting with the basics, what is snow? It's frozen water. So this is going to be stored water. It's not moving. It's stuck wherever it is until it melts. Do all places get the same amount of snow? This is both regionally, if you look at a map. If you live in Florida, you're not going to get much snow. If you live in Montana, you will. But even within your local community, what places in our community have a ton of snow? What places don't? I always think it's wild. I live up in Bridger. We get a ton of snow. I'll drive down to Three Forks. There's like nothing. So just looking at your own community and where do you get more snow or less snow? And then talking about your community, who is relying on that snow to melt? Whether it's agriculture, whether it's business, whether it's recreation, there are people all over your community who are depending on that snow melt. So those are some things just to get the conversation started with your students. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a model. So this activity is actually in two parts. The first part is creating a model of snowpack. So the reason I don't have a fancy background today is because I have to show you my model. So we will come over here. Now in your activity guide, it talks about making it out of clay or using tape. I used tape last night. I would for sure not recommend it with students. Definitely use clay or Play-Doh. But we have just talked about a watershed. And so what we're trying to do here is recreate a watershed. I have a table and it's actually elevated in the back. I just have it on a box of books. And it's to show an increase in elevation. So these are our headwaters up at the top. That's higher elevation in the mountains. This is like middle elevation. And then this is our lower elevation. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put snow in a cup up here. And this cup, all right, guys, this is going to be a little funky, but I have to take you on an adventure with me. You see that? Okay. Okay. So this cup has a little hole in it. It's like a little notch that when the snow melts, it's going to let the water drain out. So I'm going to put some snow in my cup. This is high elevation, and we're going to pretend that this is a northern slope. So we're going to cover it with a towel. So that's nice and shaded. And that is our high elevation northern slope. Then this cup over here, same thing. There's like a little notch at the bottom. I fill my cup with snow. And this one stays uncovered. So this is something that maybe has southern exposure. It's still really high. There's still a lot of snowpack there, but it is not covered and it's going to get some sun. All right, now we're going down to middle elevation. And middle elevation is just a chunk of snow. So we don't cover it, we don't protect it in any way, but it still has some significant amount of snow. And then we get down, I'll move you down here, and we're going to get to our lower elevation. Lower elevations get less snow, and it's going to be more spread out. So they're not going to be, it's not going to be a huge snowpack. It's going to be kind of spread out. Okay. So here's what I would say. What I learned yesterday about doing this inside is that it does take quite a while for the snow to actually start melting. So what I would do if I was doing this activity with kids, we would get it set up at the beginning of our time together and then come back to it, like maybe check every 10-15 minutes is probably a good way to do it, just because it takes a while to get the action going. So yeah, so we'll do that. Okay, so that is our model. What we're looking for is to watch the rate at which snow melts, the volume of snow that's added to our river, and then where our river is flowing to. Let me think here. The other things we're gonna explore later on. So they're gonna do a first round, check out all their snow, watch it all melt, and they're going to time it and record it. Then what they're going to do is they're going to start playing with the weather conditions randomly. We happen to have, I don't know if you guys can see it, we have a fan in our warehouse right at the front door. And I also, it's hard for me to see what you guys can see here, but we also have a lamp there in the back. So students can start playing with different weather conditions. They can add the lamp. This is going to be the sun. It's going to melt a certain side of snow faster than the other side. The fan can be wind. You can add more precipitation. What happens if it rains? These kinds of things. The weather, they're going to watch how different weather conditions are going to affect their snow melt. So let me just make sure I'm not missing anything here. All right, so in the Western United States, one of the big points we want to make with this activity is that 50 to 80% of our water supply is coming from snowmelt. And we want to talk about the volume of snowmelt, how much snow we have, and also when it's melting. So that is the first part of the activity. So you can get that set up, have it start melting, go to the second part, and then come back to the first part. So the second part of the activity is about measuring the snow water equivalency. So what you're going to do, does anyone have any questions on that first part before I start jumping ahead? Just throw.
How does it drain at the end of the table?
Oh, so I have a bucket at the bottom of the table that it's all going to drain into. So yeah, have something to catch. This is like a super fun activity if you're willing to get a little messy. So just be aware of your like location on that one. All right, so snow water equivalency. So not all snow is equal in the amount of water content. So what you're going to do as a facilitator, you're going to have 3 containers and you're going to fill them with the same amount of snow roughly, best you can. And then we're going to talk about different types of snow. So one is going to have a little extra water in it. So I'm just going to pour a little extra water here. This water is, or this snow is going to be your slushy, icy mix, heavy, wet snow. Okay, so we're going to recreate that for kids. One of them, we're going to leave plain. This is going to be our powdery, fluffy stuff. And then one of them, I'm just going to add the littlest bit. Well, actually, that one got more water. So this is actually probably our slushy one. One of them is going to be medium, one of them is going to be very wet and heavy, and one of them is going to be light and powdery. You're going to talk about what conditions create different kinds of snow. So if I'm living right next to a body of water, clouds are picking up all that moisture and dropping the snow, it's going to be really wet, heavy, and dense. If I'm living in high elevations with very cold temperatures, my snow is going to be more powdery. Our Montana kids are going to pick up on this really fast because everyone loves a powder day. So they're going to know I go to the mountains for a good powder day. So light, fluffy snow. So then what you do, you will give each container to your students, and then they're going to describe the snow. So is the snow grainy? Is it icy? Is it clear? Is it white? Is it sandy? All the like good descriptive words that they can come up with. And then what you're going to do, if you have a scale, I have this scale right here. This is just a postal scale, so it needs to be nothing fancy. And snow is actually measured in pounds. We don't use metric. So it actually is perfect. So what you're going to do is the students are going to measure how much their snow weighs. Then they're going to put it next to a heater, a window, somewhere sunny, just let it melt. And then they're going to remeasure it after the snow has melted. And a good question to ask before they do the measuring is, do you think which is going to weigh more, the snow or the water when it melts? So we want students to understand that their snow is just frozen water. It's going to weigh the same. And then they can also tell which snow type is heavier, which is containing more water, which of those is going to add more water to our system downriver, downstream, and why that's important. So that is kind of the gist of the water equivalency. Any questions on that? Okay, so then what we do is we link the two together, and we talk about what aspects contribute to runoff. So high elevation aspect, so which direction is it facing, what the temperature is, all of those weather conditions is gonna, our snow, our type of snow, plus the conditions in our model are gonna tell us how much water is entering into the system. All right. Any questions? I'll give you a second. Think about that. So this is good for math skills, measuring, good predicting skills, those kinds of things. All right. Okay, so now we know what a watershed is, and we know where our water is coming from. We know our snow is melting. Now we're going to talk about what happens to our river during the year. How is that snow melting affecting our river? So this is called a year in a watershed. In the Bozeman guide, we have it as, I believe it is called a year in the Gallatin River watershed. Again, feel free to adjust to your local river. Our goals with this activity to demonstrate how water moves through a watershed, the water flows, how it changes in different seasons, right? If I go in the summer versus the winter, what does that look like? Creating a hydrograph, how do we chart and keep track of stream flow? And then looking up our own local water data, figuring out what's happening in our neighborhood. So this is actually, because this requires a large group of students and a lot of room to move about, and we are online, we're actually going to show you just an animated version of this. Here we go. Okay, so this is the animated version. It talks about how we set up the activity, and then kind of goes through the steps of having the students graph it. So I will show you this.
This activity has two parts. We will start with part one. Assemble students in a branching formation that resembles tributaries and rivers. You can find a diagram of this in the activity, but let's go through this step by step. To form headwaters, have 2 to 3 students assemble at the top of the area. These students may want to stand on chairs, bleachers, or assemble at the top of a hill to mimic the higher elevation of the headwaters. To form tributaries, have students assemble in separate lines down slope. Students should space themselves so they touch fingertip to fingertip. To form the main stem, have students line up fingertip to fingertip in a line from the headwaters down. At the top of each headwaters and tributary, place a container of beads. At the bottom of the main stem, place an empty bucket to collect beads. Ask students at each headwaters to take a bead and pass it to the next student downstream. Explain to students that you will now simulate the flow of water through a watershed. Go through each of the scenarios. light rain, sun, and heavy rain. You may wish to hold up signs of each weather event for visual reference. Time the activity for 1 minute per round. Begin with light rain. Have students pass one bead at a time at a normal speed. Empty the bucket after each round, keeping the beads to count later. After finishing light rain, empty the collection bucket, keeping the beads aside. Begin the sun round. Ask students to pass one bead at a time very slowly. After 1 minute, empty the collection bucket again, keeping the beads separate from the light rain round. Begin the heavy rain and ask students to pass several beads at a time quickly. Some beads may drop on the ground. What might this represent? Explain that the dropped beads represent overflow or flooding.
This is some teachers learning how to do this activity.
Be sure to stop each round after 1 minute and empty the bucket, keeping the beads from each round. Ask students what they notice about the beads from each round. Are there different amounts of beads in each round? Are the beads in the bucket all one color or different colors? Why is this? Assign students to count the beads from each round. Record the totals on the Graph-It student copy page under Part 1. We will now begin Part 2 of this activity. Add items representing trash into 2 of the headwaters containers. Repeat the process, including the trash items, while passing downstream. After completing all 3 rounds again, ask students what they notice about the bucket contents from each round now. What has been added? Was there trash in all the tributaries? No. Even trash from 1 or 2 locations can pollute an entire river downstream. Assign students to count the beads and trash from each round again and record the totals on the Graph-It student copy page under Part 2. Let's take a look at some results from this activity. We can graph the results to create a hydrograph and compare trends. Let's graph the results in Part 2. First, we graph the water flow by plotting the number of beads and connecting the dots. Next, we do the same with the number of trash items. What do you notice about the graph? Do the lines follow the same trend? Why do you think that is? Think about the results on the graph. Does the amount of trash flow correlate to the amount of water in the watershed? Click Submit when finished.
Okay. All right. So once you go through the activity, creating a hydrograph is a great activity for kids just to understand why is there more water in the river at some points than others. You can also add in safety around this. A river is not the same all year round, so there are some times where it's safe to go swimming in this river. There are other times where it's going to be moving too fast with too much water. So they can graph that, and then one of the cool things that the USGS does for us is they are always tracking and monitoring our water systems. So you can go to the USGS page, it's a water data page, and look at your local region. If I look, someone was in the Yellowstone, so let me see if I can. Sorry, your faces are, here we go. So Yellowstone River, they will monitor discharge. So right now it's at 1,000 feet per second. You can click on this and it'll open another window. It'll give you more data and show you a graph over time. You can look at it per month, per year, over many years. And in most of our area, there are actually quite a few water monitoring stations. So Gallatin, Let's see, up by Missoula. I think, yeah, Bitterroot, Clark Fork, probably Mission Creek. So there's a good variety of small water systems or large water systems that they have data for. So it's cool to check out and look different times a year, compare what's happening in your local watershed. And then hopefully students connect snow melting to more water, more rain in the spring, those kinds of weather patterns. All right. If I saw we had some some providers here who were working with smaller children. So if that activity is too much for your group, there's another activity called House of Seasons. I also threw it in the Google Drive. It talks about water in different times of the year. So students go through magazines or pictures. They cut out pictures of water in a frozen state, in a liquid state, what it looks like in different seasons, and then kind of compare, and you can talk about whether it's moving or not and when. Okay, so those are the 3 activities we wanted to tie together. The other piece of this is, how do we talk about climate change? So how is climate change going to impact these processes that we just talked about? Julia has a great way of saying this. We have a big question. Are we talking about weather? Are we talking about climate? When Julia talks about this, she talks about weather is what I'm wearing today, and climate is what I have in my closet. So we're talking about weather is a specific time period, today, tomorrow. Climate is what is happening in the weather over a large time frame. I think it's 30 years, correct? So, okay. So we have 2 activities. We don't have time to actually go through them today, but we wanted to point them out, and we have them in the Google Drive. One is called Wet Vacation, and the other is Piece It Together. Both are talking about weather in different places. Wet Vacation, they get to pick a vacation spot, plan to go there. Why are they going there? Because of climate. In a certain time of year, this place is normally warm, or in a certain time of year, this place usually has hurricanes, or those kinds of things. So they can think about their location, why they plan their travel the way they do. And then Piece It Together is about how weather and culture go together. So if I have a cold climate, how does that impact our culture? 2 really great questions about this to connect it back to the activities we just did. What do you think will happen if we get more or less precipitation? And what do you think will happen if the snow melts earlier in the spring? So those kinds of things, like, how does this whole system shift if one of these factors changes? I just need to show you this before we go. This is one of my favorite websites, Climate Explorer. So you can do a map of the world, you can do a specific country. There are a bunch of criteria you can choose from. I am not a warm weather person, so I chose days with a maximum temperature over 100 because I'm looking out for myself and my sanity. So this map will show you, this is currently the areas that have more days over 100 degrees. This is our little scale over here. So 125 days over 100 degrees. These areas down here are not for me. And then we can pull it back and see with climate change, what is that predicted to look like in different areas. So significantly more heat across the country. So you can also look at precipitation, you can look at growing days, all different kinds of factors. You can look at it per season. So this is just a cool exploratory tool for students to look at and think about different effects. Okay. All right, Julia, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So these were just a few activities that kind of tie together really well to talk about the impact that snow has on our water. We have a lot of other activities, a lot of other grade levels. As Beth mentioned, if you are a younger, like a preschool teacher, or work with younger kids, we actually have an early childhood guide with 11 activities in it. House of Seasons is in there along with other ones, and you can buy that directly off of our store. So I would recommend that. It has some really fun activities that would be great for after school programs or preschool programs. And then we have our big guide. So what we're giving you guys now are activities that we will give out. We can give you out for free. There's some things that we require trainings for. And this is one of them. You guys have been through this, so we probably could, talk to you about getting you certified, but this is a K-12 giant book of activities with literally every single topic of water. For those of you that teach middle school and up or work with those kids, we have a specific climate change guide, climate, water, and resilience, with more activities that are focused on what's happening with climate trends. And then we also have these kids booklets that you can see here on the left in the picture. Those are great, like self-paced. Well, it depends how old the kids are, but if they can read, they're great self-paced activity booklets for them on various topics about water. And you can just find what we have in our store, which is, the link is listed there, store.projectwet.org. A free website we have is called discoverwater.org. I suggest you check it out. It's interactive. It was designed for tweens, so 8 to 12-year-old, but my 6-year-old started playing with it at age 4. Because it was the pandemic. But but yeah, he loves it and plays with it. And adults love it and play with it. And there's, I think, 9 different modules on different topics. It's just a gamified version of activities online. And then finally, we are providing you with some resources for free today. We have a brand new digital library that offers a whole compilation of our resources, all of Guide 1.0, which is our old version of the guide. And you're getting some of those activities today, as well as like some of our topic guides and e-resources for students, things like that. It is a subscription-based library, but you can get a 7-day free trial and just check it out and see if that's something you're interested in. And then we have different options that are like anywhere from 1 month to a full year. So if you're only going to use it for a month, maybe that's all you need. So just so you know, we have a lot of other resources out there for every age group and every type of educator to teach about water. And they are all fun hands-on resources. It's hard to do this virtually, but hopefully some of you, if you haven't already, can take a training from us at some point and we can get into the more fun versions in person.
Cool.
And then, yeah, just contact us if you have any questions at all about anything we did here or would like any further information.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen and then I'll go back over to our snow model table here. Let me show you guys what the situation is. Okay, so our snow in low elevations has melted and is flowing down our river. One other tip about this, I would actually do pretty large quantities of snow. Otherwise, it takes a lot to get into the river. And also, this one is very long. I would just make it shorter so that you have less time to wait. Our medium elevation is kind of starting to melt. You can see that. And then our upper elevations are not melted yet, really at all. So pretty realistic model for what we would see in an actual situation at different elevations. I would be really excited to play with the lamp and the fan and see what we can make happen. But also gives you just a sense for time. It does take a little while for the snow to get going. So awesome.
Very neat. I appreciate the demonstration and the models, and I feel like students and youth would love to go out and collect snow or observe different types of snow, and all the hands-on interactive activities are great. Are there any questions from the participants today?
Could you do one outside? You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, you could do maybe not the model, but you could certainly do the snow types outside for sure. Are you thinking of a different activity or just of these? Which one?
the one that you just showed last, to do something like this outside to see, because I mean, sometimes the weather changes really quick. Yesterday with the wind and whatnot, it probably wouldn't have been a good idea, but it depending on, I have kids after school, so in the mornings the weather is completely different than in the afternoon, so I want to bring that home to the kids.
Yes, absolutely. And the other one you absolutely can do outside, we often do outside, is A Year in the River, where they're passing the beads. My only caveat is just make sure the beads are a different color than the grass so that you can find them again, or do it on like pavement.
Or
But
use something biodegradable like beans or pine cones.
But other than that, it's a super easy one to do outside.
Thank you, that's a great idea.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Beth and Julia, and all the great resources. I'll share out this recording and also a link to the drive and some of the other links that were presented today and shared.
Yeah,
We'll also keep in touch if there's any conferences coming up, or as we have participants that joined us. If you'd like to see Project What at one of our conferences, reach out to myself, or we also have Bethany, our program coordinator, and we'd love to hear what you guys are interested in and appreciate your guys' time. One way you guys could share that with us is going to be our survey for today's session, and I might drop that in the chat right now. There's also an additional survey. Oh, well, that's in that link too, but I'll go over that. But it's for the Million Girls Moonshot. And this one is an initiative that supports equity and inclusion in STEM programming. And so by getting feedback on what this presentation was like and how that aligns with creating equity and inclusion in STEM, we'll be able to form a broader reach of STEM across Montana. And we have a few more events coming up and workshops, both in person and online. Next week, we have Glacier National Park Education Rangers joining us for our last series of Winter Wonders, and they'll be taking a closer look at winter ecology. And then we have an in-person one coming up in Bozeman at the Montana Science Center next month, and a few online virtual ones. Bethany, would you like to hop on and give a short description of a couple of our other programs coming up?
Sure thing. So I'm sorry I was late. I am super excited. I trained in Project Wet probably 15 to 20 years ago. It's a super cool program. So I was really excited that you guys were here today to share with some of our other providers. And I don't know if Heather has mentioned, we have been without our communications person for a few months. So we're all sort of trying to pitch in and get our stuff done. And as a part-time employee, I don't have my stuff on the website yet. So Heather was nice enough to say, hey, can you share some stuff? So we have a couple opportunities that are not STEM related coming up. I had just put a registration link for, this is a repeat of a session that was done at our summer conference. Lena Fox from Education Northwest is going to be talking about setting a structure and clear limits. This is a great way to head off behaviors before you have issues. There are two separate opportunities. It's going to be the same session 2 times. We had some confusion with people signing up for both sessions, but they're just going to be a repeat. We wanted to give a couple different opportunities for folks to hopefully be able to join. So that link is there in the chat. And then March, excuse me, March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, that is actually a full series. So you would attend all 3 days. And that is a hearts training, which is healing environments and response to trauma in schools. Some of us are not in schools. That's okay. We can use the same information. This is my favorite thing to teach. I'll be leading that one. And it just can be a really a great way to kind of shift your mindset and how you look at the kids that you work with. So there's the registration there.
Perfect. Thank you, Bethany, for sharing those. And also, Beth and Julie, if there's additional trainings coming up available online or in person for Project WEC, please reach out to us and we can make sure to send those out in our newsletter and keep the providers in touch with you guys. So if there's no more questions today, we just want to say thank you and we appreciate your time. And we also appreciate the great resources and expertise that you guys shared.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.